happy to have you. We'll just let folks come in as they do. And so happy to be together. You all know who I am, Reverend Cynthia. I'd like to introduce, however, Marcia Whitney, and she's up here. She's our guest today, who's doing the presentation with me. And let me just tell you briefly a little bit about her. She is a Chicago-based artist, and she focuses on the fusion of contemporary expression and Christianity. Perfect for today, she's been creating a body of work, come on in, entitled The Cloud of Witnesses. She'll have some books afterwards. I mean, how perfect is that? This is her body of work. It's called The Cloud of Witnesses. And they're paintings in watercolor and fluid acrylic that portray spiritually inspired individuals in a modern context. So her art, which you'll see in this presentation, her art prompts us to reflect on how we too are part of the cloud. Marcia is the former publisher and editor of Christianity and the Arts. She has a master's degree in art history from the University of Chicago. And she'll be joining us today. Can you wave everybody? So we're going to do a little overview here. We'll show you what our morning is going to be. We'll do a little overview about saints. And then we're going to talk about 5 different saints, female saints we're going to lift up. And we'll look at some art, how they're portrayed in years past. And we'll look at art present. And the art present will be Marcia's art that we'll talk about. Then we'll do a discussion. We'll chat a little bit amongst ourselves about what inspires us and how art inspires us to live like these saints. And we'll talk about everyday saints because we are all saints. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and we have some beautiful photographs that Marcia has. So let's begin. That's our overview. So saints in our Episcopal faith tradition. Before the Reformation, England's saints were canonized, and you all probably know this, but within the Roman Catholic framework. And then after the Reformation, the Church of England ceased that whole formal way of doing saints. So currently there is no formal canonization process. However, what we do in our tradition is lift up holy men and women who are exemplary of Christian discipleship and who inspire others. And what we do and how we do this is that we honor them in our calendar by having feast days, which you've all heard about. And we have, and this is our examples, I'm sure many of you have seen this, we lift them up in here. This is holy women and holy men. This is in our Episcopal church. We lift them up. And I'll pass this around. How many of you have seen this book before? I love it, Katie and Reverend Matt. We've seen it. TJ. That's awesome. So I'm going to pass this around. This has all of our feast days. It gives beautiful bios, the dates of our feast days, prayers. I'll pass this around. And so we honor them commemoratively and liturgically. That's what we do. Now, how do we? Oh, did someone say?
These the saints.
Yes, those are the saints that we're lifting up. 4 of the 5. Yes. So how do we do that? We look at, as a church, this is the criteria, the holiness of their life and their witness to Christ. We look at their historical significance throughout the years, their broad significance, which I love that. It's got to be their service and their witness has to extend beyond just where they were living, that it touches beyond that community. And then I love this one too for us and our awesome church, is that there needs to be a broad ecumenical acceptance, which means if there is a holy person that is controversial in some way, or other Christian denominations deem them to be a little sus, we would not want them to be a part of this commemoration. So I think that that's really beautiful, is that we keep in mind others' opinions in our Christian faith. So similarly, so the authority who's making these decisions in lifting them up for feast days and such, for the Church of England, it's their General Synod, and that's their church's governing body. And then for the Episcopal Church, we do it through our General Convention. And so that's the authority. But again, in our tradition, what we do is we use that term saint more broadly. We recognize that believers, really all believers, are saints in the New Testament sense. And so they're not, by the way, we don't believe that these saints are mediators or intercessors, like they're going to get us to heaven quicker. That's really not quite part of our belief system. But what we do is lift up their witness so that it inspires us to live into our gospel call. And that's why we honor them and celebrate them on feast days. Is that book making its way around?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Not very far.
Oh, great. No, that's okay. So who are we going to start with? So we're going to move into our five saints that we're going to lift up. And we're going to lift up female saints because we don't, they're a little bit more under the radar. So who are we starting but with the powerhouse, Mary Magdalene? So many of you know about Mary Magdalene, and rather than do kind of a born on this, here, this, the facts, there's a little bit of a theatrical bent to the bio that we're going to share with you. First of all, I just want to say her major feast day is July 22nd, just for the record. So listen to this. Mary Magdalene enters the gospel record not as an ornament, but as force. She is, as you know, a named disciple who travels with Jesus, finances his ministry, and remains when others recoil. She stands out because she does not stand back. When Roman power and temple authority converge to crush Jesus on the cross, Mary does not disappear into self-preserving distance. She's there at Golgotha in the blast radius of capital punishment. In the world of the first century, that alone, just being there, locates her in a zone of danger. Because the state that executes the teacher, who is Jesus, does not warmly receive his companions. So she was in a danger zone. She's also present, as you know, at his burial and the quiet work of loyalty after public catastrophe. And it's she, not Peter, not John, not any official apostle, who arrives first on the morning that resets the world. She finds the stone moved. She searches, she weeps. Then she hears her name spoken by the risen Christ. The first voice of Easter meets the first astonished human ear, and the ear belongs to Mary Magdalene. So Christ commissions her to go and announce the resurrection to the very apostles who will later become the public pillars of the church. And in that moment, Mary becomes, in the most literal sense, the apostle to the apostles, the authoritative messenger to the authoritative men. She speaks the most destabilizing sentence in Christian history, that the executed one lives. So Mary Magdalene endures because she marks the hinge of the Christian claim. The brutal machinery of Rome declares Jesus finished, and Mary is sent to contradict Rome out loud. She goes anyway. So the first proclamation of Easter is her act of courage in a persecuting world, carried on the voice of a woman who did not leave the cross and did not silence the empty tomb. Miss Marcia, will you walk us through this art?
But I think when we look at the imagery of saints, a lot of times they are extremely romantic, like we have here with Rubens, so she's dying. And our thoughts about saints are formed by artwork, at least up until contemporary times. But unfortunately, a lot of artists are not too interested in exploring what saints look like, or but still we have in our mind something perhaps super pious and romantic and emotional. On the other hand, you have Donatello, who's showing Mary Magdalene as a penitent and as somebody who's really ravished by the earth and by her life. And so those are two contrasting ideas. So when you think about how a contemporary artist can do a saint, what can we do that would speak to our audience, our people? So I thought in terms of Mary Magdalene as a first responder, because she was the first responder. And so I evoked what a firefighter or something. The problem is that when you do that, then how do you denote that this is who you're depicting, Mary Magdalene, because it's so unconventional. So I'm afraid the only thing I have is her sort of little name tag, Magdalene,
on her backpack strap, on her strap, right?
And then her halo. But what I did want to show was somebody who was really ritzy, and that may not be a word, but somebody who's feisty and has got her own opinions. So completely different than maybe some of the other images of Mary Magdalene. But anyway.
Beautiful. Thank you. So creative. This is so, can you tell us, Marcia, this was watercolor, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's all watercolor.
Yeah.
That one's.
I can ask a question?
Oh, please.
Sure.
I've known Marcia for almost 30 years. This is an amazing reunion. Is the backpack, does that denote travel or seeking or a journey, or is there any thought in your?
When I Googled what would a first responder, I think this actually was a woman who was a firefighter. That was something that she was wearing. I had to think of something that would be like you would think of as a first responder. So maybe the connotation of fire, bringing fire, receiving fire, putting out fires. I think one thing that contemporary artists have to do is just ask questions and then let other people come up with the answers.
It's like an air tag on the strap.
Yeah.
Oh, down there, right here.
So she had to get lost, right?
Yeah.
And find her.
Yeah. Any other questions for Marcia on this piece? Yeah, it really speaks to the urgency and the emergency in the sense of what Mary Magdalene came across, and her bravery and courage, which inspires us.
And also, I think the feeling of being outdoors, because she has kind of a sunburned nose or whatever, being outdoors so much, what does that do? And a lot of the traditional images, they're very pale, they're very porcelain. It's like they've never walked outdoors at all. And we know back then, they were outdoor people.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Cynthia,
Yes.
it dawned on me when you were talking about Mary Magdalene that she had to be receptive to the call.
Yes.
She had to be open to.
Yes.
And similarly, I guess you would say first responders have to be available to whatever message they're receiving, and they have to go without question.
What a great thought, Shelley. No doubt. Coming from an artist, Shelley's an artist too.
oh, good. Thank you.
Yep.
That was a good idea.
All right, next we have St. Lucy. So we're going in chronological order. Her feast day is December 13th. Here's a story about Lucy. Night had not yet given away to dawn when the knock sounded on the wooden door. Lucy had been kneeling by the lamp, lips moving with the quiet steadiness of someone who has traded every fear for one conviction. She rose not in alarm, but in final consent, as though she'd been expecting this hammer on the threshold since the day she vowed herself to Christ. Her mother slept in the next room, unaware that her daughter had already dismantled the future arranged for her. Dowry broken up, wealth poured out secretly among the poor, bridegroom refused. To the world, she had behaved like a mad girl, taking her fortune and throwing it to beggars, preferring obscurity to comfort, making herself the bride of an invisible king. To the man she had been promised, she'd been worse than irrational. She had been disobedient. The door splintered inward. Bronze caught the lamplight, the helmets and belts of armed men. Lucy did not shrink. In the name of the prefect, one of them barked, you are accused of contempt and of magic, of defrauding your fiancé, of refusing sacrifice to the gods. I have done no fraud, Lucy answered, only alms. And the only sacrifice I offer is prayer. They bound her wrists and led her through the streets, while shutters cracked open and faces watched or withdrew. At the forum, the prefect, Piscasius, sat waiting like a magistrate, presiding over inevitability. You are young, he said. Do not throw yourself away. Make the offering to the emperors and keep your life. I offer worship only to Christ, Lucy replied. You have power over this body, not my soul. The prefect's patience snapped. Take her to the brothel, he ordered. Let her be broken publicly until she yields. But when the guards tried to drag her, they could not move her. The stories later said it was like trying to haul an anchored ship by hand. Oxen strained and carts cracked, but the girl would not budge. Piscasius, enraged and humiliated, ordered fire. Flames were heaped around her where she stood. The air trembled with heat, yet still she did not die. No fire can burn what God preserves, she said, voice even, though smoke rolled about her like a cloak. At last the order hardened to steel. An executioner was summoned to end what the tortures could not. Steel flashed, and Lucy's blood fell like a seal upon her witness. She died young, but the rumor of her composure went farther than the order that killed her. Women spoke her name at hearths. The sick whispered it in fever, and in time she was invoked as patron of eyes and light. The girl who saw clearly enough to surrender everything before the world could take anything from her. In an empire of gods carved in stone, her defiance outlived the magistrates who condemned her.
Well, she was from Syracuse, Sicily, so it's logical to have two artists from Italy depicting her, and it was said that she had her eyes gouged out. So now, if you're an artist, how do you depict that? Well, traditionally, you'll just have her holding these eyes.
Those are eyes.
Or she has a platter and she's holding her eyes. And the problem is that in early Christianity, there were martyrs, and it was believed that if you could get close to the blood or something with that from the martyr, then you also will become part of the sainthood. The trouble is there were so many martyrs. How do you tell which martyr's from another martyr if you're an artist, right? So they pretty much focused on the way that they died. So whenever you see eyeballs, then you know you have St. Lucy. And of course she has the palm, the idea, and she was also supposed to have been beheaded. How much do we really know? We don't know. Does it matter? I don't think it matters. So how does a contemporary artist show St. Lucy? This was my version, is the idea is that the eyeballs has just got to go. That's not going to speak to anybody. But I was thinking of a young adolescent girl with monogrammed gloves, because again, I have to show this is St. Lucy with a halo, primary colors. But I did play around with the idea of the eyes. That eyes were perhaps sadistically watching her being martyred, or they're watching us, watching her. So there's all this kind of communication with eyesight there. And she is the patroness of eyesight. So I don't know, is anything else I can say about St. Lucy? Yes.
At her time, she's known as Lucy or Lucia.
Lucia.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lucia.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
Yep. She was, like Marcia said, from Sicily. Any other questions for Marcia?
She's a neurologist trained.
Yeah. I used red for the gloves with the idea that her eyes, having been gouged out, would be blood soaked. Blood soaked of the gloves. Yes.
Is the Saint Lucia in Sweden? Is that?
Yes. Yes,
They
and
were
then
like
with
lights.
the candles,
Yeah.
yes, which scares the heck out of me whenever I see these young girls walking down with these candles on their heads that are lit. But yes, that has been taken over by Sweden. So, you know, cultures have appropriated these things for their own particular purposes and rituals.
Must fit with some pagan thing back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gave me.
Yeah.
Is that another eye up there on the right? I wasn't sure what.
Yes, there's like an eye here, an eye there, and an eye there.
Okay,
That are kind of peeking through the walls,
Okay.
perhaps looking at you, looking at her,
okay.
or just looking at her. So it's a whole idea about eyesight and seeing, except she can't see.
Right,
Right.
I know you said that the red on her hands was supposed to be kind of symbolic
The
of the
gloves.
blood.
Of the gloves,
The
yeah.
gloves are supposed to be symbolic. But it makes me think of, you know, how if you hold your hand up to a really bright light, you can see a little bit of red.
Oh,
Through.
okay.
It's almost like the light of the divinity shining through her body and
Oh.
through her actions.
Oh, that's great.
kind of what
I like that. I like that.
Oh, I love that interpretation.
Yes, that's good. Love it. Thank you. Okay, that's good to see.
Okay, next on deck, St. Catherine of Alexandria. Long ago in the great city of Alexandria, where marble columns gleamed and scholars debated in crowded courtyards, there lived a young woman named Catherine. She was the daughter of a noble family, blessed with both beauty and a brilliant mind, captured here. From a young age, Catherine studied philosophy, astronomy, and literature. Yet for all her learning, she longed for truth deeper than any book could offer. When she heard the teachings of Christ, something stirred in her soul. The message of love, mercy, and divine wisdom captured her heart. She became a Christian and dedicated her life to following the truth she had found. But the Roman Emperor Maxentius ruled with cruelty, demanding that all bow before the pagan gods. Catherine could not remain silent. She went boldly before the emperor himself, her voice calm yet unshakable. "You worship idols made by human hands," she said, "but the true God made heaven and earth." Astonished by her courage, Maxentius summoned 50 of his most learned philosophers to challenge her. Yet one by one they fell silent as she spoke, her words clear, her faith unwavering. Many were so moved that they converted to Christianity, sealing their fate along with hers. So furious, the emperor ordered Catherine imprisoned. Still, her light could not be hidden. Even in chains, she comforted other prisoners and converted the emperor's own wife and guards to the faith. At last, Maxentius commanded her death. She was to be tortured on a spiked wheel. But when Catherine touched it, the wheel shattered. Undeterred, the emperor ordered her beheaded. As the sword fell, witnesses said her soul seemed to rise toward heaven, radiant and at peace. Legend tells that angels carried her body to Mount Sinai, where a monastery still bears her name. Through the centuries, St. Catherine of Alexandria has been remembered as a woman of wisdom and courage, a voice that spoke truth to power, and a heart that never bowed except to God.
So here we have Raphael's, an early Raphael, and she's in ecstasy, and you see the wheel. So whenever you see a wheel, it's St. Catherine of Alexandria, not St. Catherine of Siena, who's another Catherine. And when I was thinking, okay, I want to do something about her, what can I do? And I became interested in the idea of the wheel. And Sonia Delaunay, who has nothing to do with Catherine of Alexandria, but I liked her idea of the motion and the wheel. And what I was thinking is the wheel, that whole motif of a wheel, and all the symbolism of a circle. So what I did was something really quite unusual. Is I take off the spikes in the wheel and a suggestion of a young girl. Looking at us rather innocently. And so anyway, that was my version, what I was trying to experiment with.
I love the backdrop too, Marcia. Can you speak to, I mean, that reminds me a little bit of that Sonia Delaunay.
Yeah, I was trying to do the movement. The whole thing was the movement of, when a wheel goes around and the circle, but you also got the spikes, and the spikes being something of a torture, possibly. And yet she's above it all. I mean, I don't think you see, there's no suffering in her face there. In some ways, that all the saints were, okay, they suffered, but then they've lived on, they're beyond that, which I think is kind of a message for us that we're all suffering in some way or another, but through God's grace, we go beyond that suffering.
Yes.
So,
Any questions for Marcia about this piece? Okay.
Those three circles in the middle, I might be reading into it, but are those kind of meant to be Trinitarian?
I love interpretations. I hadn't thought of it. It's like when you read an author and you go like, oh yeah, that's the symbol or whatever, and then you go like, really? I didn't hear it. But I think, subliminal, I get, I love that interpretation. I hadn't thought about it, but I go with it.
Yes, David.
What about the markings on the right side?
Yeah, I wanted to come up with an artistic way of unifying everything. You see, her name is up here, which is also the halo. And I had all these little specks of color. And she seemed like she wasn't part of the whole movement or wheel. And so I actually have that engraved like tattoos on her face, that she is also part of that movement.
Wow, that's beautiful.
I also had when she died there.
Yeah, what is it? Can you, that folks might not be able to flip around?
Yeah, Catherine of Alexandria died at, let's see, I might have just kind of brushed that out there. Died at, I don't know if I had put the date there or not. Yeah, the big problem is, how do you say, other than the title, how can you bring in the content into the image? And say that's this particular individual that you're trying to do.
Well, you do it with each piece, which is pretty unbelievable.
And try not to do it so it's extraneous, but just that it's like part of the whole image.
Yeah.
Marcia, you didn't add, in my view, limbs, arms or legs. Is there a purpose behind that? You're just focusing, and then I'll put a semicolon. I'm also seeing an infinity, like her legacy never ends.
I like that idea. She didn't have arms and legs, but it doesn't matter.
Her purpose was,
it's beyond that. Yeah, it's more of a symbol than an actual human being that I was trying to think of. So whatever.
Beautiful, thank you. Reverend Matthew and I didn't even talk about this, and he brought up St. Julian of Norwich in the sermon. I love when that happened. So, and he happened to mention about there was war, plague. It was a really rough time during these years, as you all know, historically. So this was May 8th is her feast day, and she was a wife, mother, no schooling. You couldn't study theology like men in those days. And so she went on her way and really had this pull when at 30, Believing she was near death, she received a series of 16 showings. That's what they were called, showings. And they were revelations of Christ's passion and divine love. She unexpectedly recovered, and she spent the rest of her life turning those visions into prayer, into theology, and into counsel. She became an anchoress attached to St. Julian's Church in Norwich, and she sealed herself in a cell to live in total dedication to contemplation and spiritual guidance. So her writing, which is considered and called the first woman of English letters in Cambridge medieval history, her writing, Revelations of Divine Love, is the first known book in English by a woman. And it's one of the most daring works of Christian hope ever penned. And Matthew referred to that quote, which we've all heard. I saw truly that before God all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well, which is quoted all over. And that is her truth. She spoke of Christ's warmth, courtesy, love, and this is in an age where pulpits thundered punishment. It was all about punishing. And she called believers to trust in God's tenderness in the midst of such death and such tragedy and such harshness. She answered public panic with theological calm. She witnessed to love in an era of persecution and suspicion. And she wrote theology as a woman when female religious voices were rare and risky. Julian's cell was narrow, but her voice was not. Across 6 centuries, her hope continues to confront every age of dread and chaos, which we are kind of living in now, with the same radiant verdict. God's mercy is deeper than the worst age can be.
When I researched what images that were out there actually not very many artists have done Julian. There are iconographers, and this gal, Julia, is a contemporary, and she lives in Australia. When Julian is shown, it's often with a cat. I don't know if she mentions her cat in the writings or not. I'm not sure that, or if it's part of the legend, or it just sounds like that would be a reasonable thing to have a cat in the cell because there would be mice. So, and then she's always shown with her pen. Now over here is the statue that is actually at the church in Norwich, and that's done by David Holgate. So I took that as the inspiration, and the medium that I used is alcoholic ink, which you'll see here in a minute. So I had the same steadfastness sort of look, but I evoked all the stonework, the tracery. She was in the cell as if she was coming out of the stonework or enclosed in the stonework. And then, of course, the red as a contrast to all that. The beautiful part about using alcohol ink is that on UPO, it creates all these magnificent sort of textures to it. And so
I don't know what that is, Marcia, alcoholic.
it has alcohol in it, and it's very, very bright. It's very bright. And when you use it like on a smooth surface, Yupo is a Japanese product. It's actually not paper. So you can pour it on there and add other additives, and then it reacts on that. So
It's so cool.
Yeah.
it's hard to make a face though out of that. I mean, it does all this wonderful stuff, but then when you're actually trying to paint, that gets to be hard.
Where's her name?
You know, she doesn't. That's one that doesn't have it. Yeah.
What
I
about
don't
calling her Christchurch's own St. Julian of Norwich?
St. Julian of Christ Church.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out how to put a name on that one. It's also very difficult to do fine work with that medium. So anyway, if you want to flip back, I don't know if you can to the statue. we don't know what she looks like, of course.
Right.
For all these people, so, you know, I have freedom to do whatever I want because we don't know. But you can see somewhat how I got inspired by her face.
Yeah.
And, so, yeah.
Beautiful.
That's Julian.
Thank you. Okay, we're wrapping up with Jeanne d'Arc. I love this one because I get to say a few words in French. Saint Joan of Arc, here's her years. And her feast day is May 30th. So here we go. In a small French village called Domremy, Katie, Domremy, our French expert. Does that sound right? Domremy. Around the year 1412, a girl named Joan was born to humble farmers. Life was quiet. Fields, church bells, and the steady rhythm of peasant life. But France was at war. The English army had claimed half the kingdom, and despair hung over the land like a storm cloud. When Joan was about 13, while tending sheep in the fields, she heard what she later called voices from God. They were the voices of Saints Michael, Catherine, and Margaret, urging her to live faithfully and to help save France. Imagine her, a teenage girl, illiterate, unknown, yet suddenly carrying a divine mission that would shake kings and armies. At first, no one believed her. She was laughed at, scolded, even turned away. But Joan's conviction never wavered. She said, "I am not afraid, for God is with me." Eventually, her persistence carried her to the royal court, where the Dauphin, Charles, the heir to the French throne, tested her. He disguised himself among his courtiers, yet Joan walked straight to him and bowed, recognizing him instantly. That moment changed everything. In armor forged for her, she rode at the head of soldiers, banner in hand, not sword. Her white standard bore the names Jesus Maria and a picture of Christ. Wherever she rode, courage rose. She lifted the siege of Orléans. Orléans. I'm just trying to say Orleans in French. Orléans. Right? Thank you. Yay. Leading the troops through danger and confusion with fierce faith. Soldiers called her La Pucella, the maiden of Orléans. But glory turned to betrayal. Captured by the Burgundians, allies of the English, Joan was sold to her enemies. She was just 19. They put her on trial, not for war, but for her faith, her visions, and her defiance of men's rules. By the way, she wore men's clothing, and they had a fit about it. They couldn't stop talking about how she dressed like a man. So, in a cold cell, chained and alone, she was interrogated for months, yet she never denied her voices or her mission. On May 30th, 1431, in Rowan's marketplace, Jeanne d'Arc was led to the stake. She asked for a cross, and a sympathetic soldier handed her one made from 2 sticks tied together. As the flames rose, she cried out the name of Jesus until her voice was gone.
I love your dramatic.
Yes.
It makes it come alive. I've been kind of fascinated, and I mentioned that to Cynthia, how sometimes saints are used for political purposes. Like here we have a poster for Women of America, Save Your Country by War Saints, and we have the image of St. Joan of Arc. And so in thinking through this, I thought, okay, what about the Anglican Church and St. George? St. George killing the dragon? Really? St. George wasn't English. It supposedly was a Roman soldier, and where that dragon came from, I don't know. But I thought, oh, if I only had time, I would do St. Georgette. killing the dragon. I'm still thinking about that, how I could do that. But anyway, yes, Joan of Arc is being used to sell war saving stamps. And the image on the left, she's in female dress, you might notice. It's done actually by a German artist, Hermann Silke. And why would a German artist be so interested? He depicted her over and over and over again, but it was kind of the romantic idea of heroism and sacrifice that appealed to him. So, yeah, we really don't know what she looks like. Here you could see the judgment of the clergy, all that sort of kind of a very dramatic sort of thing. So what can a contemporary artist bring to the plate that would be something different? And so this is what I did. I wanted to show the dualism of a young girl, who really was pretty much abandoned by all of her friends in a cell, waiting, being quizzed over and over and over again, how frightening that would be. But on the other hand, she also was a soldier. So I wanted to show that dualism of personality and spirit, I guess you would say. And imagining her in the cell, either this is part of her imagination, or it has almost kind of a feeling of a textile, like a tapestry, or remembering what it was like when she led the French troops. So I was trying to do more of a psychological interpretation of her. And I did some kind of scrawling up here too, like graffiti or something. I believe she was, maybe even writing her name or something on the wall. So,
Can you speak to the upper left corner, Marcia?
Yeah, so I was saying, either this is in her mind, she was remembering that she was leading the troops, and she had armor that was specifically made for her. Or is it an actual image? Is it a window through something into something else? It's ambiguous, but in my mind, I think this was the past, threadbare. It's part of why she is who she is.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'll leave the.
What's the material?
That was fluid acrylic. Yeah, fluid acrylic a lot. I think this was part, I can't remember, it was a couple years ago I did it. This might have been watercolor right there. So, but we all have kind of a dual personality in some ways or another, our public and our private or whatever.
That sort of shows her humanity and her innocence and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I see that, Mary.
It's kind of hard to show nuances in artwork because it's flat, you have one image. So how can you show multiple interpretations of a personality that obviously was pretty complex?
Oh. Yeah. Yes, Shelley.
Well, I keep going. The story, each one of these stories is about a woman who countered the authorities, and even everyday housewives were thrown into insane asylums if they objected to their husband's rules, and they were deemed crazy. So in effect, each one of these women was punished for the strength of her conviction, intelligence, and so that's interesting. But also in this case, you added that she dressed like a man, which would have been even more threatening to men because she was usurping their role physically as well as psychologically.
Right.
And so I see it as the two sides of her. We all have the feminine and masculine, but maybe men have a problem acknowledging that they have it, and certainly don't want to acknowledge that women have it as well.
Certainly no men in here, though. Because we have a deep faith and we believe in our belovedness across genders. But yes, thank you.
And also she couldn't be vulnerable. I mean, she couldn't show that she was weak or show that she was scared.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
Maybe she couldn't accept that side of herself.
maybe, yeah.
That's interesting.
Because she's kind of hiding behind the
the
Armor.
mix. These are some prompts for us to share, but in general, anything stand out? Anything stand out to anybody? One story over the other, or artwork over the other, as you're looking at the past and you're looking at the present. Any takeaways from what you've seen so far?
Just in reference to the masculine feminine thing, I haven't heard Sir Nick, I was Sunday school kids all listen. I don't know if you mentioned this, but Julian and Norwich famously call Christ our mother. So she says that feminine.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That's coming to mind a lot.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yep.
I think it's interesting, to this whole, presentation, thank you, both of you, just about the strength that people have had, particularly women who perhaps didn't have a voice in these times,
Yes.
and even today sometimes, but just to persevere in belief, is really inspiring to me. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad. Same. Gary, tell us.
I would Mother Teresa compare, right, with these things.
Amazing. Equally amazing. Unbelievable. In fact, she's in the book that went around. Yeah. For sure. What else, Gary?
Another slip leaping through the book, there was a page of the male clinic in there. Are they saints?
All of them at Mayo Clinic.
I didn't figure that out.
Yeah, I don't know. TJ or Matthew, do you know about that? No.
I don't
I'll
know
have
if
to
there's
read
a
up.
specific, I mean, there's a couple points in Holy Women, Holy Men where it's not talking about like one particular individual, but it'll be like this saints of the genocide of Rwanda, or like it'll be a group of
The
people.
New Guinea martyr.
Yeah. So like I don't know offhand if there was a particular incident at Mayo Clinic or if it's for clinicians in general. I haven't looked into the.
I'll have to read the full page.
Yeah.
Just that it's.
Mary.
Silly question, but what qualifies one to be a saint?
Well, that was that original page that we talked about. It's interesting. In our faith tradition, it's about your witness, how holy you are, how committed you are to God. But also, if you were touching people outside of just the local community, outside of the context, and then how other Christian faiths look at that person, if they also see them as a gospel call. So really, we lift up inspiring people like these saints. But it's a perfect segue to talk about, we're inspired by these stories. We're all saints in different things. And knowing one another in this community, we see and know what you're doing. Not all the time, but we know and see your faith in Christ. And we're really fortunate in that Marcia's had a really interesting life. And in addition to her artwork, and she is super humble and didn't even want to bring her books, by the way, which will be available afterwards, which she doesn't even want me to say. But she has had a really rich life of bringing her faith to her art. And so we call this, there's 2 slides here. We call this Everyday Saints because we are saints among us. And being open to being inspired on today, All Saints Day, by some of these stories and by one another is what sainthood in our faith tradition is really all about. And so, Marcia, could you speak to?
Yeah, my husband, who's a retired hand surgeon, after we retired, he and I went to Africa for 9 months. And I thought, what could I photograph that hasn't been done? And I thought I would document Christian expression. And the Africans are so emotional. So, it was just fun. And when I got back, I realized nobody was really interested. I thought, okay, well, I don't care. Wherever my travels are, I still try to capture that. And it's hard because people don't like to have their pictures taken while they're in a spiritual environment. You can take a picture of anything, but not that. And so as I started compiling all the pictures, I was amazed at the variety. And this was in Warsaw. This was at Easter time, and they're wearing black and they look rather somber. Probably what we wouldn't think of as an Easter celebration. This was in Peru at a little village, and that was on Good Friday. And I just love the idea of the pattern of the hair. And the one on the left, do you have a full picture of that one on the
I
left?
don't.
No. Okay, that's quite okay. I was in Iona, Scotland, and there was no pictures. Don't ever take pictures. No pictures, no pictures. So I went in the afternoon, and these ladies were getting ready for the evening service. And obviously I couldn't stand there and take pictures. I just had like 2 shots, and they didn't notice. And I just happened to get this lady whose right hand is raised. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been as dynamic. And all the ladies around the altar. So to me, it was really, and I just concentrated for this show on just the women. So, and this was in an Armenian convent. She was saying prayers before the meal. And again, I had my camera ready. I was so nervous. I took a picture and put it back down. She never knew. So, but I just caught her. A lot of it is luck, quite frankly. And this is here at St. John Cantius, where they had the relics of an Italian young girl martyr, and just captured that little girl who's looking at the waxed images. And then the final one is one from Africa, and there are albinos. And this was a school that was financed by the Scottish churches. And the full picture is crossing the bridges or something like this. But I love that idea that here's these 2 Africans, but really quite different from each other. So that's what I've tried to document wherever I go, is the variety of experiences of Christian experiencing and how alive it is. So, yeah.
Really beautiful.
But it's like the idea that we all are cloud witnesses.
Yes. What a beautiful conclusion. We are all part of the cloud of witnesses. And such beautiful moments and inspiration for us of people in their faith. So God bless you and keep you. Thank you for being here. And Marcia will be here. She does have books if you would like to talk to her more. And happy All Saints Day. May you be inspired.